Shalom Israel, Most High in Christ bless, and welcome to Hebrew Chronicles Publishing. Today we're going to talk about how I wrote this book and the process of me doing it. The purpose of me writing this book starts back when I was about 13. And when I was 13 years old, my father actually started me out on a typewriter. We were staying in Winter Garden, and I was going to a school called Lakeview Middle School. And I used to write a lot of short stories, and it didn't get around to my dad until, they sent a note home, and they pretty much informed my father that they took a lot of the stories that I used to write and hand in to my teacher, and they was putting it actually in the main office at the school. And my father started thinking wow, he finally found something, because he used to get worried. I didn't want to do anything like working on cars and stuff like that. My dad was a mechanic, a race car builder, and I had no interest in things of that such. I like to be in a house, I like to stay in my room. I love to write. I love to read books. I used to read a lot of Goosebump books, a lot of It books and things of that such. Loved horror stuff. I don't know why. But anyway, my father seen that I was writing a lot, and he surprised me and it was a harsh surprise. He showed me this typewriter he had. It was an IBM. I would never forget it. And he says, what I want you to do is every day you come home from school, I want you to bring home a newspaper. If not, I'll give you one that I have. And I want you to type everything that you see on the article. If he'll give me one topic, like one little article, and he wants me to retype that. So I did it over and over and over again, because of course, when it comes to a typewriter, it's not like a computer. You mess up, you got to redo the whole thing. To the point that I ended up perfecting it. Took a while, but I ended up perfecting it. Then I used the typewriter, and he says, now you can start typing whatever you want. So I had to pause for a minute, because I'm like, well, I had so many built up ideas, and that's what he was trying to do. He understood that my ideas, the more that I set on it, it builds and builds and builds. So now I had the urge to write that I had for a long time, and now I'm actually able to do it. So I started writing. I gave him, I used to stand in the backyard and stare off at this abandoned house back in the field by itself. And I'm like, I want to write about something. I'm going to make a horror story about this. Now, this is a house that I used to just look out. When I used to go in the backyard just to stare out in the field, because Oakland was it had a lot of country. It's country backwoods. So I'm looking at a house in the back, all the way in the back by itself. I used to think about all them horror movies. I'm like, I got an idea for a story. So that's when I wrote my first book. It was about 25 pages, and my dad read it. He was like, you good, son. You real good. There's a guy named Stephen King. He ain't got nothing on you. Now, I was looking at him like, who's Stephen King? I'm 13 now. I am 13. Now, fast forwarding up, I ended up, I wrote a lot of short stories at this time, all the way up. And I'm going to fast forward up to when I got to vocational school, because I did not graduate from high school. I dropped out, but I ended up going to vocational school which was called Job Corps. I went to Albany, Georgia, and I attended Job Corps and obtained my high school diploma and a certification in brick masonry. I stopped writing for about 5-6 years. But through that school, I ended up getting back my urge to writing, because, there was nothing else to do. It was like being in the projects. It was a bunch of brothers from either Augusta, Georgia, New York, Atlanta, and there was like a very few people from Orlando. I couldn't really adapt to anybody that was there, because everybody was too hood. So I said to myself, what am I going to do now? I'm going to just lock myself in my room and read. And of course, reading feeds my urge to write. So I started writing short stories. And when I started writing back short stories, I started to love doing that again. So I ended up writing my first book when I completed school a year after. And my first book that I published was entitled Abraham Van Helsing. And Abraham Van Helsing, you can just look it up, was my story was based off the origin. Now, most of your stories, when you do like what they call rewritings, or I forgot the technical term for it, but it's like when you take another person's character and redo it in your own vision. And that's what I did with Van Helsing, but the unique way I did it was I didn't copy the story. I just took the name of the character and wrote my own story and just used their name. And I let a person read it and they were like, you should turn this into a book. So that's what I did. But I had no understanding of how the process worked. So I ended up spending a lot of money and I got no results from it. I think I sold like 20 books, 25 books at tops. And that really got me hardly anywhere. So fast forwarding again, because that was in 2011 when I published Van Helsing. So fast forwarding it up about 7-8 years, I published the 12 Tribes. When I wrote that first pick, this was like a year before about 3 or 4 months before I ended up writing it. I was about 6 months in the truth, and I was worried that because of the things that I was learning, that me writing again would be wicked because of the thoughts that I was having, at that time. Because Van Helsing is technically a hunter, a vampire hunter. He goes out and he hunts mythical creatures, vampires, werewolves, whatever the case may be. So that was the realm that I was in. But reading the scriptures gave me an idea to write a story, but I didn't know if it would have been wicked or not. So I went over it with the leader that I had over me, and understanding the scriptures a lot better. He told me, he says, give me a concept, an idea of the story that you're actually writing. You give me the idea. Then I'll let you know if it will be worthwhile you writing it without getting backlash from it. So I end up telling him, I gave him a brief synopsis of the story, a brief bio of the overall story. And he told me, he says, you need to write that because I would love to read it. And I gotta say, if it wasn't for him actually telling me that, I wouldn't have started back writing again. I would have, because my mindset is, I don't want to offend the Most High. I don't want to offend the nation of Israel. So that's what I did. And when he told me, just go ahead and write it, I think I began writing that book around May or June, around that of 2018. And when I wrote that piece, it was, I think a lot of people liked it, especially as a brother named Isaiah. He backed me up on it. He read it. He was the second person to read the story. I made the book and I actually handed them out to quite a few people, and only 2 people read it, And I'm not saying this to throw it out at anybody, but 2 people read my book and they gave me positive feedback, and that's what I used. I used the positivity in that, and they told me, they said, listen, especially the first person that read it, he stayed in the same complex as me. He's like, do you understand what you wrote? I'm like, yeah. He says, what you wrote was very confrontational. If you actually publish this, you might get a lot of negative backlash from your people and a lot of others, because I've never read nothing like this before, and I was like, that's what I went for. I don't want to be the same cliche, coming up with the same stories and the same idea and all of that. I modeled my characters after my forefathers in the Bible. This right here is what motivated me to write the 12 Tribes. The King James Holy Bible. So when he told me that, it made me more. It encouraged me more to write even the second piece. So once I actually handed it off to my brother Isaiah, and he read it, he was like, wow. Because when I was telling him about the idea that I was having, he said, it sounds good, but I want to see it. And once I finished it, put it in his hands, he read it, he was like, brother, this is good. This is really good. And I told him, I said, well, I believe I want to publish this book. So I end up publishing that book through Outskirt Press. And Outskirt Press, I spent a lot of money, about almost $3,000. Pretty much, once going through all of these different things, the spending and understanding the process of what needs to be done to publish a book, I seen the weaknesses in these companies, Lulu.com, Outskirt Press, and I said to myself, I need to create something for my people, because I'm not the only Israelite that likes to read and write literature. And we need righteous literature out here. Everything that we go out here and indulge has a lot of wickedness in it. I mean, think about it. A lot of our people, even such as myself, watch anime and watch movies based upon comics. All of your Marvel movies, your DC movies, all of those things are replicated, whitewashed versions of our forefathers in here. Superman, Thor, all of those characters are offshoots, mixed, of course, in a big barrel of Greek mythology. You know what I'm saying? But the majority of those characters, they were inspired by the Holy Scriptures. So I said to myself, if they can do it, why don't I do it, but all the way in righteousness? And I ended up creating a book, the first of its kind. And it was called The 12 Tribes and the Power of the 7 Churches. Publishing that book was an inspiration. But at the same time, I said to myself, it's not hard to publish a book. It's hard to become the publisher. Because Israel, it's hard for us to, it's a lot of things that hinders us in the things that we need to get done. So I created Hebrew Chronicles Publishing to help our people publish righteous material. You know what I'm saying? And to make it easier. I give information based upon the experiences that I have. If you have a concept, but you don't really know how to write, guess what? I can help you put it together. If you have a book that you already have together and you need a artist, guess what? I understand how to get that done. If you want to publish your manuscript and you have all things together, but you're hesitating because you really don't know the process and what needs to be done, go to HebrewChronicles.com and just read over the website. That's my company that I created, Hebrew Chronicles Publishing. Go to HebrewChronicles.com and just read over a lot of the things that I have in there. I give different advice. I give the process, the simple process of how to publish through my company, and I make it very easy, and I give you a lot of information. And if you have any questions, send me an inquiry and I'll get back to you through email. Okay? So, Israel, it's great that we build with each other. That's what the Lord has always wanted, for us to work together as a nation. And me putting together this publishing company was not for me. It was for the nation of Israel, because I know we need it. There's a lot of literature we need to put out. There's a lot of pictures we need to put out. Just like music that's being put out, we need righteous literature as well. Because our people don't always gravitate to music. We also gravitate to the things that we read and the things that we watch on television. So to reform the mindsets of our people, we need to give them righteous things. Just like the Bible says, evil communication corrupts good manners. So if we can put righteous things out there for our children, for the next generation, to conform their minds into righteousness, so the things that they read when they come from school, guess what? They got something righteous to read. They got pictures of great heroes that look like them. That's the purpose, because our image has been taken away. I am trying to put things in place to give us back our image.